With 26 Democrats announcing they will retire from Congress at the end of this year, a failed legislative agenda failing approval among Joe Biden, and now a new poll showing that in the United States, Democrats have lost their party advantage and more people now identify as Republicans. The desperation is becoming clear, with some Democrats saying we must pass this quote unquote voter rights legislation, otherwise we won't win, which is a strange thing to admit. But what we're really seeing that's kind of funny and sad is the floating of Hillary Clinton 2024. In a story from timcast.com, if Biden loses Congress in the midterms, Hillary Clinton may run in 2024. They keep trying to make Hillary Clinton happen. A deeply unpopular woman that people rejected the first time for Donald Trump, and now we're supposed to believe she can, in 2024, defeat Donald Trump. Both Trump and Hillary Clinton will be particularly old. I think Hillary's already in her mid to late 70s, so by 2024, we're talking some of the oldest candidates ever in this country. Sorry, I just don't see it. I really do think many of these stories that are coming out, what I mean by this is, a Clinton advisor says Hillary may run. What's the point of that? Are they putting feelers out there to see what the response is going to be to a Hillary Clinton run? Nobody likes her. You will lose the entirety of the progressive vote. And even though it may only be around 10% of the country, that means you will lose. Perhaps. If Donald Trump does run, the sheer hatred for the man may actually help Hillary win. And that's the plan, I guess. But I got to be honest, I would not be surprised if more people hate Hillary Clinton. Though I think it's fair to say it's a toss-up. A lot of people in 2016 did not vote Hillary because they don't like her and didn't care about Donald Trump. I think I'm one of them. I wasn't willing to vote for Hillary. I think she's terrible. I think Joe Biden is terrible. I think Obama is terrible. And I did not care at all about voting for or against anybody. In 2020, however, a lot of people genuinely felt they needed to vote against Donald Trump and they would vote for anything. So they voted for Joe Biden. So is this the long con for the Democrats? They knew Hillary Clinton couldn't win in 2016. They've destroyed the Democratic Party. People are fleeing. In Florida, there's more Republicans than Democrats now. Store shelves are barren and people are revolting, but they can turn it all around with Hillary Clinton. Now, I think it's insane. I think what we're really seeing is that regular people are sick and tired of school lockdowns. They need their kids to go to school. They're tired of their kids being forced to wear masks. They're tired of forced vaccination. They're tired of constant fear-mongering. They want to move on with their lives, and the Democrats won't do it. Enslaved by their own tribalist cult. The best thing they have to offer is this. Well, we're seeing it across the board. Frustrated Democrats, say the New York Times, are begging for a reset right now because the midterms are coming. And they're going to get wiped out. It's entirely possible we see something like what we saw in the UK, maybe even in certain areas that are, historically blue for the past several generations, turn red. That actually happened in Miami. I'm not making a hard prediction here. I'm saying, hey, maybe what happened in Miami might happen again somewhere. I honestly don't know. I will say for all Republicans, you'd be don't underestimate Democrats. I'll put it that way. Do not underestimate their ability to pass voter rights legislation, they call it, or to actually convince people through lies and manipulation in the mainstream press. However, I think that ship has sailed. They've played that hand, and regular people have said, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, let's dive into the news, and we'll see what's going on, but we won't just start with Hillary Clinton. We'll start with the major shift in political party preference. This is big. Democrats historically have an advantage over Republicans, and now it's inverted. The lies are done. The Democratic Party is in the decline. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member to help support our work. If you like videos like this, if you like this show, and if you want to help support our journalists who are writing these stories, go to timcast.com in the top right-hand corner and click sign up. And you will also get exclusive episodes of the Timcast IRL podcast, which we put up Monday through Thursday around 11 or so p.m. And I don't normally do this, but considering Andy already tweeted it out, I'll say this. If you're catching this show on the 17th, tonight, we are going to have James O'Keefe, Andy Ngo, and Libby Emmons all on the same show because we're crazy and this should be a wild conversation. So again, we're going to have a members only podcast there as well. So check out that show at 8 p.m. tonight. That being said, smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's read this story from Gallup. They report, on average, Americans' political party preference in 2021 looked similar to prior years, with slightly more U.S. adults identifying as Democrats or leaning Democratic than identified as Republicans or leaned Republican. Now, they want to say, however, the general stability of the full year average obscures a dramatic shift over the course of 2021, from a 9 percentage point Democratic advantage in the first quarter to a rare 5-point Republican edge in the fourth quarter. Democrats, trying to save face, will say, in the year 2021, Democrats held an advantage by 3 points over Republicans. But if you actually break it down by quarter and probably by month, you can see that Republicans have consistently been growing in party size and Democrats have been shrinking. You know, I passively identified as a Democrat back in the day, 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And then just started to consider myself independent because I don't know anything about the Democratic Party, back then. And I didn't want to be involved. And so I said, independent. I still consider myself there for the most part. But it's interesting to see what will happen when many people who were formerly Democrats now have no problem and overtly come out and say they are Republicans. They say these results are based on aggregated data from all U.S. Gallup telephone surveys in 2021, which included interviews with more than 12,000 randomly sampled U.S. adults. My friends, this is not just some fly-by-night pollster asking 100 people. This is 12,000, a massive sample size. Massive. Now, if you get like 2,000 people in a sample size and you've got a pollster, what they do is they'll strategically target certain areas of the country to try and figure out what they think the general population feels about a thing. That could be tough because those polls may not be that great. 12,000 randomly sampled U.S. adults seeing this shift. Now, that's massive. It's entirely possible that it's a telephone survey, and I'm here to be reasonable and give you real facts. And as a telephone survey, could it be that the people more likely to answer their phone are probably older? Young people like texting and posting on social media, so when they see a number they don't recognize, they click end. I know I do. Is it older folks more likely to answer the phone? If that's the case, could it be that's why we're seeing this skew Republican, because older people are Republican? It's possible, and I think it's fair to bring up. But when we're looking at 1 year, it's not like all the old people just aged out in a few months. Suffice it to say, the same people were answering the phones throughout the year. It's 1 year, and thus, I think the shift is legitimate. I think the Democrats are collapsing. Here's a story from thehill.com. Florida looms large in Republican 2024 primary. The Hill reports Florida is emerging as the epicenter of the early fight for the GOP presidential nomination, as speculation grows about the possibility of as many as 4 Republicans from the Sunshine State pursuing the party's nod in 2024. Among the Floridians seen as potential White House hopefuls are DeSantis, Rubio, Rick Scott, and of course, Trump, who has repeatedly hinted at 2024. Rubio's out. Okay, he might run, but come on, please spare me. Rick Scott, never going to happen. DeSantis and Trump, that seems obvious. They say the densely packed field of Floridians weighing campaigns for the White House raises the potential for a political free-for-all that could pit some of the state's most prominent Republicans against one another. But it also underscores the extent to which the Sunshine State has become a hub for the conservative movement in recent years. Quote, "You're almost guaranteed that a Floridian is going to be the nominee in 2024, said Ford O'Connell, a Florida-based Republican strategist and former congressional candidate. Until Donald Trump became a Florida resident, Florida had never had a presidential nominee or VP nominee in the history of the state." Wow, is that for real? That's crazy. "It's gone from being an important battleground to literally the center of the universe for the Republican Party. There's no way to know for sure how the Republican presidential field will shape up. Duh, that's called seeing the future. Scott has said that he's planning on running for re-election in 2024, while DeSantis has sought to tamp down speculation about his national ambitions, saying that he's focused on winning a second term in the governor's mansion this year. Now, we've asked this question. Will DeSantis run? Some have said it would be a mistake because he'd be running against Trump, and Trump is insanely popular. Others have stated if DeSantis does not run now, he will lose his steam and never have another chance again. And if he does run now and does lose, he burns himself out. Then what? He runs again and he's a failed candidate? Now, I think there's definitely a chance for DeSantis in 2028. I think it's a strong possibility he runs in 2024. We won't know for sure for some time. Look, it's only the beginning of 2022. We haven't even gotten through the midterms yet. And what happens in the midterms will potentially influence what ends up happening in 2024. From timcast.com, ladies and gentlemen, you waited for this moment and you probably don't care. And I got to be honest, I don't think very many people will even click on this video to watch, because not only do people hate Hillary Clinton, many don't care about her at all. I'm going to level with you guys. When I'm going through the news trying to figure out what the biggest story of the day is, I saw this and I said, I'm willing to bet people won't click on a video about Hillary Clinton. They'll just say, don't know, don't care. She's not relevant. She's not in politics. And this is stupid nonsense. Well, within reason, I'd agree. I think a lot of the stories that have come out about Hillary running are just nonsense. But it got to a certain point where there are so many stories about it. I think there's a possibility Hillary is having people put out feelers to see if they're going to get a positive response because she desperately wants to be president. From timcast.com. A former advisor to Bill Clinton says there's a good chance Hillary Clinton will run against Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. In a radio interview on Sunday, Dick Morris claimed that a Clinton versus Trump rematch is likely if the Democrats fail to maintain majority control in government. Morris went on to allege that failure in November's midterms would cause Democrats to turn on President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There's a good chance of it, especially if the current president loses Congress in the midterms, Morris told WABC radio host Jim Katzimatidis, however you pronounce it, sorry. Morris applauded Clinton's campaign strategy, which could see her compete against Trump after he beat her to the White House in 2016. Hillary has set up a brilliant strategy that nobody else is able to do, Morris said. What she's done, at a point at which no Democrat is willing to come out and criticize Joe Biden, but all Democrats are disappointed with him and have to realize the ultimate correctness of our accusations that he was incompetent to be president, she has set up a zero-sum game with him. The worse he does, the better she does, because she's positioned herself as the Democratic alternative to Biden, concluded Morris. Spare me. If they thought Hillary Clinton could win, she would have run in 2020, not skipped a cycle. No, she can't win. She's too out of it. Too many people hate her guts. It's a stupid idea, and it's probably never going to happen. In the interview, he also pointed out that it appears Clinton has positioned herself as an alternative to the extreme left views. She has previously cautioned Democrats to be mindful of candidates that are running in what she refers to as purple districts. Morris also said there is only one person capable of that thinking, her husband, Bill. So far, Clinton has not said if she intends to campaign for president in 2024. However, she has publicly stated that Biden's efforts mean nothing if we don't have a Congress that will get things done, and we don't have a White House that we can count on to be sane and sober and stable and productive. Morris claims that Clinton could easily take her place as the Democratic Party's change candidate who can contrast Biden's failures in office. Morris went on to state, the left wing took over the party and led us into disaster in the 2020 midterms. All part of their big plan, is it? Is that what the Democrats are doing? In order to finally give Hillary Clinton her turn, they are sinking themselves in 2022 so that desperate and angry Americans seeking some kind of alternative will vote for Hillary in 2024 and give the Democrats a clean sweep? That would imply that after the Republicans win the midterms, they sink it as well. Right now, people are pissed off at Democrats. There's not a whole lot to say about Republicans, and there hasn't been for some time because all they do is obstruct. And if the Republicans win in 2022 and do the bare minimum, I can't imagine people will be upset with them because, by contrast, the Democrats will look extremely bad. I mean, they do. That's basically what's happening. It's like Mitch McConnell's awful, but the Democrats are so much worse that it's just like, yikes. Here's the news from CNBC. This country is getting angry when they go to the supermarket. GOP pollster says Democrats are going to be crushed in November. Well, it's not so much that you heard it here first. People have been saying it. And I would caution Republicans to be careful on this one. Don't get your hopes up. They'll try and rile you up, make you think that the Republicans have it in the bag, and maybe they don't. And to be honest, even if the Republicans do have it in the bag, are we just going to get a bunch of neocon, establishment uniparty congressmen and women who do nothing but stink it up, smash the system, or smash their chances, resulting in Democrats swooping in to save the day in 2024 with Hillary Clinton? Well, maybe not. But keep that in mind. If you do not vote in the primaries, don't expect anything in November. CNBC reports, discontent over skyrocketing inflation is the most important issue for voters heading into this year's midterm election. And Democrats are going to pay the price, according to Frank Luntz. While Luntz is a Republican, he tends to take both parties to task when he feels they're missing the mark on the issue. Quote, "We're not just anxious anymore. This country is getting angry when they go to the supermarket, when they fill up their tanks. They're going to take that anger out at the ballot box in November." Luntz said he can't fathom why President Joe Biden is trying to paint such a rosy picture of the economy while many people are struggling with higher prices against the backdrop of the hardships of the continuing pandemic and spiking COVID cases around the nation due to the highly contagious Omicron variant. Voters have given Biden poor marks on the economy in recent polling, including the latest CNBC Change Research survey. Quote, "There's a complete disconnect between what they are being told and what they're experiencing. The reason inflation is so important politically and economically, it's universal, ubiquitous, and it's understandable. I think this is going to have a much bigger effect on the electoral outcome in November than things like the Voting Rights Act or January 6th. This is hitting people where they live." I'd like to pause there and say, very simply to our good friend, Frank Luntz, the Voting Rights Act will change how voting is performed. That will have the biggest impact on the election. I'll just leave it at that. And you can take a look at that voting rights bill. Luntz bases a lot of his analysis on takeaways from focus groups with swing voters. In the lead up to the 2020 presidential election, for example, he predicted Biden would beat incumbent Donald Trump, which is amazing. That was surprising. However, before and after the election, the pollster was rather even-handed in his criticisms of both Trump and Biden on CNBC. "You can't blame Republicans for the high inflation," Luntz said on Friday on Squawk Box. This is only something that's happened over the last year. It may not be Joe Biden's responsibility," Luntz acknowledged, recognizing the dynamics causing rising prices, such as persistent easy money by the Fed. "But the public is increasingly thinking it is Biden's fault, and the consequences of that are significant on Democrats." The White House did not immediately respond for a request to comment. This week, there was more confirmation of what Americans have been feeling in their everyday lives. Inflation is raging, and everything from food to gas to buying big-ticket items like used cars is costing a whole lot more. The government said Thursday that the December Producer Price Index rose 9.7% year over year, the largest increase on record. The reading on last month's wholesale inflation came one day after December's Consumer Price Index rose 7% year over year, the quickest pace since June 1982. While both numbers were basically in line with Wall Street estimates, they were still more evidence of problematic inflation. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing regular people not caring all that much about the core policy issues, the nitty gritty of voting rights. They're saying, yo, why can't I buy milk, bread, and eggs? I see this in the grocery store when I go. When I fill up the cart and the price is through the roof. I've mentioned it a lot, right? But if you've heard me say it, if you haven't, what used to cost me $150, $200, it's now $600. I'm not even kidding. We went and we were getting lunch meat, and it was like the card was a third full, and it was like $600. No joke. I thought it was wrong. I was like, no, this is a mistake. They must have done something wrong with the prices. And I looked at the receipt and I was like, individually, each item didn't seem like anything crazy, like salami and cheese and stuff. And then I looked and I was like, $10 here, $10 there. I didn't think about it. If you're looking at a price of something and it's around $10 for like a pack of, maybe you're looking at $5 to $10. You're saying that if you get 60 to 100 items, you're looking at hundreds of dollars. In fact, it could even be as close to $1,000 depending on what you get. Now, I don't know, what specific policy other than the mass printing of money. I don't know if there's something Joe Biden could have done because of the collapse. What I can say is rejecting these mass spending bills. I'll put it that way. Let me clarify what I mean by what I'm saying. I don't know exactly economic wise what you do to stop everything where it is right now, other than do nothing. That's what I've heard. I've heard economists say, just stop. Just stop. Let the market course correct. Let it heal. But it seems like the problem is that would hurt Democrats in the elections. That's why they won't do it. So they're trying to artificially pump or give money or print money, hoping that in the short term, it confuses people into voting for them. And then afterwards, here's the recoil. That's what I think happened in the last year with Democrats pushing these mass spending bills, Republicans blindly just following, with them. And it brings us to where we are today. And Trump has a lot to blame for it. His inexperience, his failure to fire certain people. Well, it may not be Hillary Clinton, but considering the fact that many people believe Republicans are going to sweep this year in the next elections, I'm not surprised to see this story from the Hill. Democrats see good chance of Garland prosecuting Trump. If you can't beat him, use the weight of federal law enforcement to make sure he can't run anyway. Now that's scary, isn't it? Look, I always say this. If they commit crimes, they deserve to go to jail, to be prosecuted, to be found guilty, etc. But this is getting crazy. Prosecute Trump for what? Well, the left just believes Trump's a criminal. I've not seen any evidence. He's not been charged with any crimes, and so innocent until proven guilty. And that being said, the idea that Democrats would be rooting for, cheering on the criminal prosecution of their chief rival in 2024, it's insane. Now I want to point something out. I called for Joe Biden to be prosecuted, to be arrested. When Donald Trump was looking into Joe Biden's quid pro quo, Joe Biden was not running for office. It was a year out before the primary was even going to begin. And Joe Biden hadn't announced anything. And I was like, okay, fine. Donald Trump is predicting that Biden will run. And sure, Biden did end up running. That's not how I see it. I think Joe Biden was engaged in illegal activities in Ukraine. We've seen more than enough evidence. And thus, they said, Biden, you better run. They used it against Trump. And that's why we end up with crackpot old broken brain Biden. Well, here's their next strategy. They did impeach Trump over that, by the way. The Hill reports Senate Democrats believe there's a good chance the Department of Justice will prosecute former President Trump for trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election and inciting the January 6th attack on the Capitol, which would have major political reverberations ahead of the 2024 election. I'd like to point out, it was Republican Rep. Kinzinger who said that Ray Epps, a man seen on camera screaming for people to enter the Capitol, did nothing wrong and thus he shouldn't be prosecuted. If you got a guy who's overtly telling people to enter the Capitol, and then you have Trump who said, we're going to be strong, we're going to go peacefully march and watch people vote or whatever. You think Trump incited an insurrection, but this other guy didn't? Spare me your lies. What they're trying to do with the sedition charges is justify this insurrection claim so then they can then file lawsuits against Trump supporting Republican candidates and Trump and disqualify them from holding office. It would be nefarious, to say the least. Democratic lawmakers say they don't have any inside information on what might happen and describe Attorney General Merrick Garland as someone who would make sure to run any investigation strictly by the book. But they also say the fact that Garland has provided little indication about whether the Department of Justice has its prosecutorial sights set on Trump doesn't necessarily mean the former president isn't likely to be charged. Given the weight of public evidence, Democratic lawmakers think Trump committed federal crimes. But Senate Democrats also warn that Garland needs to proceed cautiously. Any prosecution that fails to convict Trump risks becoming a disaster and could vindicate Trump, just as the inconclusive report by Robert Mueller's team was seized upon by Trump and his allies to declare his exoneration on a separate series of allegations. Exoneration? Trump isn't guilty of anything. You are innocent until proven guilty. The fact they investigated him and found nothing means not only was Trump not guilty of anything, but he was innocent from the start, never even guilty, and still innocent to this day. Yes, exonerated. Senator Richard Blumenthal said, quote, clearly what Trump did in the days leading up to and the day of the January 6th attack on Congress falls in the ambit of what's being investigated and perhaps is criminal. That is a lie. And you need only look at Ray Epps and Adam Kinzinger. Now, if I was a Republican and they were bringing this up, I would just be like, I'm sorry, the moment you said Ray Epps didn't incite anything and shouldn't be charged, I will not listen to anything you have to say. They go on to say, Senator Tim Kaine said it's up to the prosecutors at the Justice Department whether to charge Trump, though he believes that the former president's actions on and before January 6th likely violate federal law. That's what they're going for. I'm going to tell you why I don't think they can win. I don't think they can win. I'll show you why. Salt Lake City Tribune editorial calls for National Guard to keep unvaccinated people in their homes. What? Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Utah is a particularly blue state or anything like that. But this was something we saw from Rasmussen about Democrats. They're in favor of house arrest for the unvaccinated, taking their children away. Well, around 30%, but more than half house arrest, and around half want internment for the unvaxxed. Regular people, I'd imagine, are going to run screaming from this. But let me show you what else we got going on. Here's a tweet from Rob Dreher. He says, day 6 of COVID. Now my wife and kids have it too. All of us vaxxed. Wife and I both boosted not long ago. Everybody we know who has Omicron was vaxxed. Most also boosted. So I got to ask, what's the point of vaccine passports now? Security theater? Prepping social credit system? This has to be one of the worst political blunders we have seen. And I'm not saying scientific. I'm not saying medical. I don't know anything about that medical stuff. Don't take medical advice from me, or I'm not talking about science. I'm talking about the Democrats going full speed into this narrative, demanding everybody, vax mandates. We got to have a mask mandates. You got Cook County, Illinois. You got Frederick County. You got DC. You got New York. You got LA. You got Boston. All these places saying vaccine mandate. And people are still getting sick. So look, if you're in the cult, if you're a cultist, you'll probably just march in lockstep with these people. But if you're a regular person, you're asking these same questions. What about these policies from Democrats makes sense to any of us? It doesn't. Why are we doing it? Someone responded to Mr. Dreher. Elizabeth writes, my adult son, husband, and I are on day 4. My husband is unvaccinated. He's doing way, way, way better than my adult son and I. WTF. That's not what we were told will happen at all. I'm grateful, don't get me wrong. Harder to buy into the narrative now, though. I'm not here to talk to you about whether or not you should or shouldn't get the vaccine. That's on you, man. You need to figure out what's right for you and talk to a trusted medical professional, as I always say. But you can see how the narrative is shattered for regular people. This woman is saying she's still grateful. Grateful for what? Lady, what are you grateful for? You're sick. Harder to buy into the narrative now. Yeah, well, there you go. Whatever the narrative is. If they want to say, that this is what the Democrats support, and it's proving not to work, or at the very least, the policy is proving not to work, or the policy is just pissing people off, Democrats are going to lose. Which brings me to the soapbox. From the New Republic, on non-citizen voting, New York City blazes another trail. Trailblazers. Most people don't know it, but there's a long history in this country of non-citizen voting. Even the Confederacy embraced it. Oh, I didn't realize we were basing our positions and policies off of what the Confederacy had been doing, but sure. I do think it's stupid to come out and say, don't compare it to the Confederacy because if the Confederacy did it, it must be bad. No, I'm sure the Confederacy had basic things that made sense, like, a post office or something. So sure, but non-citizen voting, we get where this is going. When you allow people into a place and they're not citizens, they've pledged no allegiance, they have no loyalty to you and your city, you have to be stupid to allow them to vote. Sorry, I'm not going to let my neighbor come in my house and then vote on my open door policy. Imagine living in Chicago and saying, well, I know the 3 of us are roommates in this house, but I'm going to let those guys across the street vote as well. It's like, yo, they don't live here. Yeah, well, you know what? They can come by whenever they want. And they walk in the door and they've been there for a few days and they're like, yo, we think you should leave your doors unlocked. You're going to be like, I don't want my doors to be unlocked. I have stuff in here I care about. No. Unlock your doors. We're going to go open them. Then you get into an argument. Now you're arguing over whether or not the doors should be open. Now the doors are open, more people come in. All of a sudden, there's 10 people. You and your other roommate are screaming, close and lock the door, but now you've got 8 people voting against you. And guess what? They're using your stuff, they're breaking your stuff, they're getting dirt everywhere. It's the stupidest thing in the world. And you know what? You don't need to hear me say it. Regular people. What do I mean? What do I mean by regular people? I mean moderate Americans. The stressed sideliners, I think they called it. People who don't care about politics for the most part, which is changing. They're mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore. And independent voters are more likely to become Republican than Democrat. The Democratic Party is also losing substantially more Democrat voters to the Republican Party. The Republican Party is growing. In Florida, it's outpaced the Democrats. In the country, the Republicans have taken the advantage from the Democrats. That, to me, is insane. It says maybe the red wave thing is right. Maybe there will be a big red wave. I don't think it'll guarantee us anything. I think we need to make sure that in the primary elections, you make sure you vote for Republicans who are not neocon establishment types. You want America First libertarian types. Live and let live. Help this country. Reallocate the tax funds into, I don't know, fixing pipes and helping people and maybe even, a New Deal. Yeah, I'm totally in favor of the government saying, hey, we're going to take money away from these foreign incursions and put it towards, I don't know, building bridges and roads. Yeah, we could really use that. I'd love to see a high-speed rail. I'd love to see maglev tech, but we don't get that, do we? What are they even spending the money on? Military stuff? Okay, I get it. We're the world's police. But the will for war is waning. The Democrats are not going to be able to maintain this. Progressives will turn against them because they don't want war either. So you take a look at this non-citizen voting stuff. You take a look at the collapsing stores, and it says to me that Republicans, they could take it. But now, with all of that stacked in front of you, you must vote in the primary and make sure the guy or the person, because we're politically correct here, right? Ladies can be in Congress. The person you vote for is going to bring your values to Congress and say no to this, to the insane policy of the Democrats, to the open borders nonsense, the destruction of the working class, to the big banks, the massive transfer of wealth. They're going to stop it and say enough. That's our chance. Don't forget to vote at the local level for your city comptroller, for your school board, for your mayor, for your sheriff, whatever it takes. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. tonight at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. We should be having Andy No, James O'Keefe, and Libby Emmons. So that should be a heck of a show, but I don't know, it might snow. We'll see what happens, but it'll be fun. So we'll see you there at 8 p.m. Thanks for hanging out. youtube.com/TimCastIRL live, and I'll see you then.